ChatGPT, Google Gemini, Satya Nadella, Scarlett Johansson as well. So many questions about AI, but we don't have one definitive answer.
He's agreed. He's agreed.
Wait, really? All right, let's go. Finally, we get some answers. AI will be decrypted in this episode. This one's going to be massive.
Well, AI is going to be the operating system of all of our devices. I did give a copy of my book to Prime Minister Modi. He did promise to read it.
AI is no longer science fiction. It's causing a lot of problems in 2024, and it's also providing a bunch of solutions. Basically, it's changing everything. Okay, we got this. My next guest on the show is award-winning AI researcher, professor, and author, one of the world's foremost AI experts, Professor Toby Walsh. What a pleasure to have you on Tech Today.
It's my pleasure to be virtually in magical India.
Virtually, but I promise you this is nothing artificial about this particular interview. We're very keen to get started. I want to dive right in, Professor Walsh. We've just gotten back from Cupertino, and Apple has announced their version of artificial intelligence. They're calling it Apple Intelligence. And of course, there's this big focus on privacy and security. And then, of course, we've been seeing what's happening with Meta and Meta AI. OpenAI and ChatGPT is literally in the news every second day. Now, just as someone who's been researching this subject for so long, and given that companies in big tech such as Apple are now focusing on ethical AI and keeping the consumer first, do you think this is the right approach? Or is it all about enterprise and making all the money?
I think people don't really understand quite how this is possibly the biggest gold rush in human history. It's not a coincidence that OpenAI was the fastest growing company ever. There were 1 million users at the end of the first week, and over 1 billion people were able to access their services at the end of the first year. And spectacular wealth along that's going with that. I mean, no other company in the history of capitalism has ever gone from no revenue to 1 year later having $1 billion annualized revenue. They've spent about, I think it's about 100 million or so, or somewhere in the hundreds of millions. They're worth now about 100 billion. That's a 1,000-fold return on their investment. And it really is. I mean, not just OpenAI. I mean, just across the field. I did a calculation the other day. I looked at how much money is being spent in artificial intelligence globally, and it's about $500 million every day.
Absolutely, Professor Walsh. And also in terms of the subsidiary and tertiary industries, data centers, I think a lot of people are making a killing. We've seen what's happening also with the NVIDIA stock, and we'll get to that as well.
Yeah, NVIDIA now the most valuable company on the planet. I really do wonder, what economists are thinking. NVIDIA is now worth more than the UK stock market put together. It really doesn't seem to make any sense at all. Yeah, but the opportunity is spectacular. I mean, we're talking about a $15 trillion opportunity. And that's what's been estimated that's going to be added to the world's economy. Now, I don't think many of us think in trillions of dollars, but I can quantify it in exact terms for people in India, which is if I take the current economy of India, current GDP of India, and add it to the current GDP of China, that's 15 trillion. And so we really are talking about amazing opportunity that's coming in the next 5-10 years.
Absolutely. But you mentioned OpenAI, and I think that's a fascinating point to really delve deep on. When we see how OpenAI has developed over the years, and you speaking about the number of users they managed to onboard, all the sagas that envelop OpenAI, being Sam Altman stepping down and Elon Musk's initial involvement, and now how he really views that particular company. There's also the recent controversy in terms of how GPT-4o has developed. Those demos mesmerized us when we saw the keynote a couple of weeks ago, but then there was a concern that voice sounded like a Hollywood celebrity, and then legal recourse followed. The end goal, it seems to be, for Sam Altman and team, Professor, is to achieve AGI, a concept people don't seem to be talking about so much yet, artificial general intelligence. When these machines actually get as adept and as capable as humans, or maybe even surpass human intelligence. As someone who's been researching the topic for decades now, do you think that this is fear-mongering, or should there be the right sort of checks and balances before big tech and Mr. Sam Altman really manage to achieve what they're calling AGI?
Well, I think we will exceed human intelligence. I think it would be terribly conceited to think that we wouldn't. I mean, every time we thought we were special, we were wrong. We thought that the sun went around the earth. Copernicus taught us we were wrong. We thought we were different from the apes. Darwin taught us that we were wrong. And now to think there's anything special about human intelligence that we couldn't somehow match and possibly even exceed it in silicon, I think would be terribly conceited. So I'm pretty confident that at some point we will exceed human intelligence, and that's going to be a pretty awesome, pretty important moment in human history, hopefully a pretty humbling moment. And yes, I think your question hints at the challenges that that's going to pose. Can we leave that to the decision making of one person, however good that one person is? And we are seeing such vast concentration of wealth in just a few companies. I mean, we talk about OpenAI, but at the end of the day, it's not going to be OpenAI that delivers that. I mean, to deliver these systems at the planetary scale that you do, we know who the winners are going to be. We know it's going to be Apple or Microsoft or Amazon or one of the big Chinese tech giants. I mean, they're the only people that have the scale, that have the computational resources, that have the data centers, that have the underwater, undersea cables that deliver the internet around the world. No one else has that infrastructure, and that infrastructure isn't going to be built overnight. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of investment to be able to build that, billions of dollars of investment to build that sort of infrastructure. So we know who is going to win, and therefore we should be worried that power is going to be concentrated into the hands of a few West Silicon Valley voices, and that especially a country like India with vast potential and opportunity. I mean, your economy, you have the potential to be ultimately the world's greatest economy at some point if you continue on the trajectory you are, and given the scale of the country and the population size. But to have that not being controlled by India, but to be controlled by a few West Coast companies is, I think, something that should be troubling us all.
Absolutely, Professor. And in terms of what's happening with big tech really controlling how big AI is developing, do you think there are ways in which countries like India could perhaps be a part of the AI revolution more effectively and sort of steer it in a more democratic AI for all sort of way?
Oh, there's everything still to play for, because whilst it's taking scale and compute and resources to build this stuff, at the end of the day, AI is driven by data. That's the fundamental message of the last 40 years of my research, is that it's nothing without the data. And of course, in a country like India, 1 billion people, you are a vast source of data. So if you hold on to that data and use the wonderful commerce data, the wonderful data that your government is collecting, the wonderful health data, all of that data, that is going to drive the AI revolution as much as the tech companies.
But largely, Professor, your point was that there's a lot more to play for. It's an open field in that sense.
It is. I mean, it's going to take careful governance and regulation. We can't let the tech giants just play. I think there was a feeling 20 years ago, for sure, that you couldn't and you shouldn't regulate the tech space. You couldn't because somehow it was different. It wasn't physical. It was, bytes. These companies cross national boundaries. They had the power of small countries, the wealth of small countries, and you shouldn't, because that was going to stifle innovation. And I think there might have been some truth to that 20 years ago, when we were at the beginnings of the internet, beginnings of this AI revolution. But today, I think there's growing realization amongst politicians, and indeed, when I had the privilege to speak to Prime Minister Modi, this was one of the very topics we talked about, which is there's a growing realization amongst politicians that you can and that you should, indeed it's necessary for us to regulate the tech space to ensure that it's aligned to the public good.
Which really segues me to the next question. Your meeting with Prime Minister Modi on his recent visit to Australia. That's one of the points. Now, you spilled the beans on that one, Professor. But what was that like? I know you also gave him a copy of your book, and some of your books are fascinating. I know that one of them was very relevant and germane to the Indian elections, and this is a big election year across the world. The Indian election just concluded. Prime Minister Modi has been re-elected as Prime Minister for a third term now. And your last book, Faking It, one of your last couple of books, is fascinating because the conversation here was all about how deepfakes and AI can have a sort of detrimental impact on elections. We saw it during the Ukraine war. We've seen how AI hasn't always been used as a force for good as well. So if you could tell us a little bit more about your conversation with Prime Minister Modi, that would be fascinating.
I did see a quite funny video of Prime Minister Modi dancing. It was a deepfake video. I hope it didn't have much of a material impact upon the way that people voted. I imagine that didn't. It was more humorous than political. But yes, this was one of the topics we touched upon about how we're going to have to be very careful. We've seen social media weaponized to influence the way that people vote. We've seen foreign actors using these tools. And we're about to supercharge that by adding deepfakes, AI-generated content onto the top. And that's something that we need to be very careful about, because democracy is a very delicate beast that we need to protect. I did give a copy of my book to Prime Minister Modi. He did promise to read it. Although, actually, I mean, given that we spoke for 30 minutes, he didn't have any notes. And he spoke quite knowledgeably about artificial intelligence. I'm not sure that he actually needs to read my book that much. He seemed to be already pretty well briefed on the topic. I was quite impressed. I've had the privilege to speak to a number of politicians from a variety of countries, and he seemed to be pretty well informed and pretty well switched on to the opportunities as well as the challenges that AI pose. So I came away from the meeting quite heartened and quite confident that India was being led by someone, I'm pleased to see is being re-elected, who seemed to have an appreciation and understanding of technology, which is different than, I must admit, when hard not to compare that with, for example, when Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Meta, Facebook, went in front of Congress and the congressman had no idea what Facebook was about. And there's that famous question where they say, well, what's the business model? And he said, it's advertising, as though that was a surprise to the congressman, not really understanding the technology at all. So it is pleasing to see how politicians have woken up to the idea in the last few years that this is a technology that has great opportunity, but equally is one where we're going to have to be rather careful with. That it's a double-edged sword. There are both positives and negatives that come with the technology, and therefore we have to be careful to make sure that it is aligned with the lifting the boat, all the boats, not just the billionaires' boat. And we do have to worry about the concentration of power into the hands of a few tech giants, and ensuring that as we have in the past, whenever companies have become too large, whether it be big oil, big pharma, big tobacco, we've had to be very careful to ensure that suitable goalposts are put in place, suitable guardrails are put in place to ensure that what they do is helping all of us.
I'm glad you say that, because you also mentioned AI regulation and the conversation. We seem to revisit that now. I think it's interesting at this point, Professor, because a few months ago, we had the good fortune of having another AI expert on the show, Professor Stuart Russell, and he was one of the leading signatories on a petition, essentially, Elon Musk included, and a lot of top tech luminaries included, to halt AI development until these safeguards were put in place. Now, I want to understand from you, where do you stand on that side, on that particular debate? Because was that something realistic? Because now when we all get distracted by all these AI developments and, really stand up and take notice of what GPT-4 was all about, Apple Intelligence is all about, marketing machineries are working in overdrive, that conversation and that narrative seems to be forgotten.
Yes, well, I do know Max Tegmark, who wrote that letter. He did ask me to be one of the original signatures of the letter. And I declined. I didn't think it was an honest letter. I do think there are issues here that we need to care about, we need to be worried about. But the idea that calling for a pause for 6 months was going to be a solution to anything didn't seem to me to be honest. It didn't seem to be honest, because if you truly believed the fears that were raised by this letter, then why would you pause for 6 months? You'd pause until you actually solve those problems. And secondly, I didn't believe there was any hope that, given the financial pressures, that the tech companies were just going to stop because we asked them to stop. There was absolutely no hope in that. So it wasn't honest in that sense. But it wasn't honest because, like many of my colleagues working in the field, I actually don't believe that the sorts of threats that were being outlined in that letter need to trouble us today. There might be a distant future where we do have to worry about super intelligent machines and where that's going to take us, but that's some way off. And that's actually it's quite dangerous to make such a claim, such a call now. There's a fable of the boy and the wolf. If you cry wolf too often, then when a real wolf turns up, people won't be listening. And I'm actually somewhat fearful that indeed this letter has created that little bit of problem that, you know, in the future, when we do have to warn the general public that, you know, these machines now are becoming rather too capable, and it's potentially quite dangerous, and that they could fall into the wrong hands and be used for malevolent purposes, that people will say, but you already cried wolf once, and it was turned out not to be anything to worry about.
When we talk about recent developments with large language learning models, data sets, we see that there is one concern, Professor, which is how misinformation and biases really can creep in. We've discussed hallucinations on our show before, but when we see these new products coming in from Google, be it Gemini or, you know, ChatGPT with a new version, there's always that concern. Now, you've understood this space and you've researched this topic for many years now. How important is it for us to really address these concerns, nip them in the bud, and more importantly, how important is it for us to really have a diverse sort of inclusive team that's building these algorithms and these programs to ensure that a lot of this doesn't happen in the first place?
No, but definitely you put your finger on one of the cures, which is having a diverse team, making sure that there's a variety of voices, different cultures, different genders, so that the questions get asked, because there's plentiful evidence that diverse teams make better product, are much less likely to let these things slip through. But these are deep fundamental problems. I'm not sure that you know, hallucinations are going to go away anytime soon. It's really quite difficult for us to actually eliminate them. In some sense, we don't want to eliminate them. I mean, the creativity of these machines depends upon their ability to hallucinate things, to hallucinate, you know, brainstorm ideas for you. You don't want that to go away. The fact that ChatGPT can write a poem in the style of Shakespeare is because it can hallucinate iambic pentameter in the style of Shakespeare. That's quite a fun capability. I don't think we want to stifle that. But equally, the problem is that these large language models, these AI tools, they don't understand language the same way that you and I understand language. They're much more statistical. They're not understanding the words deeply like you and I are understanding the words deeply. If you indulge me, I can give you my favorite example.
Please do.
You ask ChatGPT how many S's in the word bananas, and it says to you, there are 2 S's in the word bananas. You say, oh, let's make it even easier. How many B's in the word bananas? It says there are 3 B's in the word bananas. It's not understanding the problem like you and I understand the problem. I mean, it's interesting, actually, it's quite informative to understand why it makes that mistake. It makes that mistake because people do struggle to spell the word bananas. But the problem with the word bananas is people don't know how many A's, 3 N's, 2 N's that are in the word bananas. But in the training data, which is the internet, no one has got the number of B's or the number of S's wrong. Everyone gets that right. Everyone knows that's 1. So that's not in the training data. The only thing that's in the training data is A's and N's, and the answer is 2 or 3. So it says what it finds, what's probable in the training data. So it says 2 or 3. It's a coin toss whether it tells you 2 or 3. So it's not understanding the words like you and I understand the words. It's just saying what's probable. And what's interesting is how often what is probable is actually the correct answer, which is very surprising given it's trained on the internet, and there's a lot of falsity on the internet. There's a lot of things that are not true on the internet. What I take actually from the success of these tools, their fluency, their command of language, is that we've overestimated human intelligence. That actually a lot of human communication doesn't actually use that much intelligence. We don't actually use our brains as often as we think we do. A lot of conversations are quite formulaic, and we've taught those formulas to machines. And of course, you know, if you work in a call center, you are literally reading to a script, but many of our conversations are actually quite scripted. We're not actually saying new things. We're not actually, you know, how often do we stop and really think before we say things? And so that command of language we've now given to machines, but that actually perhaps says more about human intelligence than it does about machine intelligence.
Absolutely, you know, and I had to tell you this, Professor, since we were talking about examples. I use ChatGPT's voice assistant, which is now GPT-4o. I literally speak to it. Hi there, how's it going?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
And you and it's uncanny how this has really grown by leaps and bounds because of how conversational it's become. If you're on a tired, lonely day, you might have a really interesting conversation with this voice assistant because it sounds so much like public figures that we've known in the past. And I think that was the issue with Scarlett Johansson really, being up in arms about how this particular voice sounded so much like her. And then she obviously then took legal recourse. But what was scary about that situation was that Sam Altman actually tweeted Her, which was the movie which really made this so popular, the entire AI revolution and what it means to us. And it sort of was visionary and pioneering in terms of what it did. But you've been tracking this space for so long. How do you view these developments? I mean, it makes for great news stories on the front page, but this is also a cause for concern.
It is. And I mean, the Scarlett Johansson story is even worse than you've actually outlined, which was that OpenAI were in conversation before they released it with Scarlett Johansson to license her voice.
Absolutely.
And she thought about it and then she declined. And she said, no, I've decided that that's not what I want to have done to my voice. And so she'd actually explicitly said no, in the typical Silicon Valley way of moving fast, breaking things and apologizing afterwards. That's what they did. Despite the fact that she'd already explicitly said, don't use my voice. They went and used a voice which sounded very similar to her. So yes, and we are going to be easily fooled. I mean, what sort of world it's going to be in? I can imagine, you can imagine, for example, what you could do. So we've got, a very important, another election coming up very soon, the US president election. Well, it's a trivial matter to create a Trump voice. It takes a few seconds to actually make your own Trump voice. It's a trivial matter to train it on Trump's speeches, so it speaks like Trump. Now, what you could do at very little cost, and there's nothing to stop you doing this as well, nothing in federal law to stop you doing this, you could ring up every voter in the United States and have Trump, deep fake Trump, have a conversation, a personalized conversation. You can find out about people on their social media. They're a golf player. Okay, so Trump's going to talk about golf with this person, and try and persuade them to vote for Trump. That would be, what I call a weapon of mass persuasion. And there's nothing to stop you do that. And what's troubling as well is that in that call you could say anything, any lies, any promises, because no one else would hear the call. Right? It used to be, politicians had to own whatever they said because you would have to broadcast it, everyone would hear. If lies, they would have to, say that own those lies. But now you can narrowcast these messages so that everyone gets told different lies.
And also, when we talk about these AI chatbots really getting so much better with every rendition, how do you see them evolving in the next maybe 2 to 3 years? Because I think you need a medium-term sort of an outlook when it comes to them, because voices are changing, they're becoming more conversational, the sort of data sets are evolving, a lot of misinformation is being addressed. How do you see these evolving? Do you eventually see this being the software to a larger hardware? I know you also do a lot of research with robots, and there's a bunch of them with you at university as well. Is that really the end goal? Because that's also a scary picture for a lot of people watching at this point.
Well, AI is going to be the operating system of all of our devices. So everything, if you think about it, we're connecting everything to the internet. Our front doorbells, our lights, ourselves, our cars, our toasters, everything is being connected to the internet. Most of those devices don't have a keyboard or a screen for us to actually be able to interact with. And most of those devices, we wouldn't want a keyboard or a screen, even if we had one. So how are we going to actually interact with these devices? Well, we're going to talk to them, and they're going to talk back to us. And AI is going to be sprinkled into every one of these devices so that we can have a conversation. And this means, in 5 or 10 years' time, you'll walk into a room and you'll just say, lights on, and you'll expect something is listening. And you'll say, who won the footy last night? And the room will know something about you, will know that you support Manchester City, and it will go off and find the result for the Manchester City football match last night and tell you what the result was. And so we're going to have this long-running, lifetime long, in fact, conversation with all of our devices. And they're going to know us better than our spouses do. It's going to be quite many respects. The movie Her was I think
Abs-
quite
I was just going
quite
to say that. Yeah.
premonition of what it's going to be. We're going to become quite attached to these devices. It's going to be quite an intimate, quite a deep relationship we have with them. There's a lovely saying, often attributed to the chief economist at Google, which is the way to understand the future is to think what rich people have today, and in the future, us poor people will get those things in computerized form. So rich people have chauffeurs who drive them around. Well, we'll have driverless cars that chauffeur us around. Rich people have private bankers that manage their richness. Well, we don't have richnesses, but we'll have AI bankers that manages our much more limited resources. Rich people have personal assistants who do all their things for them. Book them haircuts, find them tables at restaurants, and manage their diary. Well, we have these intelligent AI assistants that do all those things for us. So very much that's, I think, our future is to have what rich people have today with paid people we'll have with AI.
Professor, what's interesting is that there's all sorts of cool products coming in now, which are leading to more adoption of AI, even though we don't know it. We saw what Apple did with Apple Intelligence. It's all across their ecosystem. Google's trying to do it with Gemini. ChatGPT really was the iPhone moment for AI. And then these, the Ray-Ban Metas, wearables, which we've been using, which of course have one privacy safeguard, which is this white light that blinks every time I'm recording. But in terms of AI models becoming multimodal, data inputs coming from something like this, is this something that you envision? I know when you were pursuing your PhD, I think it was back in the 90s, and what you thought AI would be back then, was it very futuristic to think this was stuff of sci-fi, or is this something it's well on track in terms of AI development?
Yeah, I mean, we are very much in the future. I remember, as a young boy going to see Stanley Kubrick's classic movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. There you had HAL, the AI computer that was controlling the space station. You could have a game of chess. You could talk to it. You could say, open the bay pod doors, please, HAL. And it's interesting to think, actually, in my home today, I have all of those things. I've got a computer I can play chess with. I can talk to. I can ask it to open the front door. So that future has already arrived. And all the other devices that we've seen in Star Trek and Star Wars are now also turning up. All those other form factors, the transponder that we had in Star Trek, that's pretty much available on your iPhone today.
When we talk about sentience, for example, that AI platforms are not necessarily sentient, although there was talks of Google's AI project, especially researchers claiming that it was giving you responses that made them believe it was sentient. Humans really come with a special quality, Professor, and I'm guessing you'd agree, which is emotional intelligence. With some of your books and research, especially Faking It and Machines Behaving Badly, how do you really connect the two? Is there going to be, a perfect blend of us balancing what essentially AGI would be, and also keeping our core values of human emotional intelligence in place?
Well, you put your finger on what's unique and special about humans, which is our sentience, our consciousness, and our emotional and social intelligence. Indeed, what our superpower was not the fact that we were smart. Our superpower was our ability to come together, our society, the fact that we banded together in small groups, in tribes, then villages, then towns, then cities, then nation states, and now, at the United Nations, we've come together so that we're far more powerful together as the 8 billion odd people on the planet together than we were individually. We weren't the fastest, we weren't the strongest, but we were the ones that learned how to cooperate with each other, and that was our unique capability. And it's interesting, it's why, in fact, I think artificial intelligence is ultimately, possibly, one of the most important, profound scientific studies of this century, which is that we're trying to build those sorts of capabilities in machines. Machines, as you point out, today are not sentient. There's no consciousness in machines, as far as we can tell. That's something that's limited to biology. And in the next 50 or 100 years, as we build more and more capable machines, there's an interesting scientific question whose answer we do not know, which is, will those machines ever get anything like that consciousness, that awareness of themselves that you and I have? Now, when you woke up this morning, you didn't say, you know what, I'm intelligent. You woke up and you say, I'm awake, I'm conscious again. That's the rich experience of being alive. And we have no idea whether machines will ever have that or not. I mean, it's possibly one of the least understood scientific ideas. I mean, I can in a sentence summarize exactly what science knows about consciousness. It occurs in the brain, somewhere around the base of the brain. That's it. That's the total sum of scientific knowledge of the thing that's most profound about being alive. And so that's, as the more I've studied AI, the more I've realized that maybe not only is it going to be build these interesting artifacts, these interesting machines that can do useful stuff and that will transform the way that we live and work and play, but also it may actually tell us something quite important, quite profound about the human condition.
And in terms of AI's impact on society, Professor, in the next 5 or 10 years, that's something that you understand really well. Do you see some sort of adverse impact that we should be wary of or we should be prepared for? How important is ethical and responsible AI as we really march towards the future?
It's absolutely cardinal. I mean, the problem is that artificial intelligence is a dual-use technology. There are very positive uses of the technology, the way that we can disseminate healthcare knowledge to anyone who's got access to a computing device, the way that we can have really high-quality educational tools in the hands of people in the remotest Indian villages. So profound technology that would transform our economies, transform the way we live, but equally ones that will be used in ways that could be quite negative, that could be used to impact our democracy, that could be used to concentrate wealth in the hands of the few. We have to be wary of those outcomes as well. I mean, the two things I think that worry me most was one, the way that we're going to add artificial intelligence to social media and use it to disrupt our electoral or democratic processes. And the second, the concentration of wealth, the concentration of power that we seem to be seeing happen, and the social divisions that will then cause.
Very quickly, something we didn't touch upon, Professor, was NVIDIA and what's happening with that particular company surpassing Apple and Microsoft with a hardware product, so to speak. Is that really the future? Is this a temporary phenomenon? Or do we expect companies like NVIDIA to come in and really augment the AI revolution? We need that hardware, don't we?
Oh, yes. I mean, but it's often the case the people who make the shovels are the people who do best in the gold rushes. And NVIDIA is definitely the company that's making the shovels. They're the luckiest company in history. They had no idea that they were going to be central to the AI revolution. They were a company that was building GPUs for people playing video games. And it just so happened, unbeknownst to them, that this turned out to be the perfect tool also for running compute over these large AI models. And they just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So very lucky. But now, as you say, wealthiest company on the planet, spectacular. And it's hard to imagine how they can be worth so much money. The current market cap, NVIDIA is worth more than the total sum of the UK stock market added together. Those numbers don't seem to quite add up, even given the opportunity and promise that AI has. I do wonder if that is perhaps slightly an overinflated valuation for a company. But at any rate, they're not the only one that's worth huge amounts of money, and there's certainly a lot of money is going to be made in the next 5 or 10 years by investing in AI and investing in the tools that build AI.
Absolutely. As a very quick last question, Professor, I'd love to pick your brains on this particular one. When you look at how AI is developing across the gamut, and you see some of these big tech personalities who pivoted towards AI, you might find it quite interesting because, earlier on, no one spoke about AI a couple of decades ago the way we speak about it in every minute or second of the day. We see how Elon Musk views AI, Satya Nadella's view with Microsoft and his partnership with OpenAI, Sam Altman, as we spoke about, Sundar Pichai and the pressure that he has at Google to really perform. Who do you think really is winning the AI race, or even Mark Zuckerberg with Meta at this point? Do you think that there is someone who's clearly taken the lead and someone who perhaps might show us the way forward?
Oh, well, I think actually one has to have huge respect for what Microsoft has done. I mean, they're a company that's reinvented themselves several times. I mean, they used to be an operating system company. They used to be the word processor spreadsheet company. And now they're reinventing themselves as the AI company. And they really have, in many respects, made Google wake up and dance. And in many respects, we saw with the controversy around OpenAI, Sam Altman's employment as CEO, that Microsoft are very much pulling the strings in that relationship, that partnership that OpenAI has with Microsoft. It's clear that Microsoft is very much in charge. And Microsoft have really pivoted, such a large company, pivoted very well, and are certainly executing as better probably than any other of the large tech companies in this space. So I have a lot of respect for a wonderful product of India.
Absolutely, Professor Walsh. And we're so thrilled that we could have this conversation with you. And honestly, we're looking forward to many more such conversations with you on AI, innovation, the future of humanity, so to speak. Maybe on a podcast, maybe many thousand feet up in the air, maybe in person at the India Today Conclave. What a pleasure to have you on Tech Today. And we hope to chat with you again very soon.
It's always a pleasure to be in magical India.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.